Adelante, Heriberto.
¿Puedo iniciar ya?
Sí, adelante.
Ok. Buenos días, bienvenidos a todos y todas. Este es el Seminario Internacional Lengua, Cultura y Cognición, presentado por el Instituto Nacional de Antropología en la Coordinación Nacional de Antropología. Los coorganizadores de esta actividad son Rosalía Rodríguez Vázquez de la Universidad de Vigo, Frida Villavicencio de Ciesas en la Ciudad de México, Demián Blasi de la Universidad de Harvard y Harald Bayen de la Universidad de Tübingen, y yo mismo, Heriberto Avelino, del Instituto Nacional de Antropología e Historia. En esta sesión, la sesión de noviembre, tenemos el gran placer de tener con nosotros a Mark Turner del Case Western Reserve University. Él hablará acerca de su proyecto, Hen Lab, an overview of big data science methods for the study of multimodal communication. En esta ocasión, yo estaré haciendo la traducción simultánea, interpretación simultánea en español, en el canal de YouTube. Sin más preámbulo, le doy la palabra a Harald Bayen para que haga la presentación formal, la semblanza de Mark Turner. Entonces, por ahora me despido en inglés. Estoy en el canal de YouTube en español. Harald, you have the floor. Please introduce Mark. Thank you.
It's a pleasure for me to introduce Mark Turner. As Heriberto already mentioned, he's Professor of Cognitive Science at Case Western Reserve University. Mark has published extensively, including books entitled The Way We Think, Conceptual Blending and the Mind's Hidden Complexities with Fauconnier, and More Than Cool Reason, a Field Guide to Poetic Metaphor with Lakoff, and The Literary Mind, The Origin of Thought and Language. He is the recipient of an Anneliese Meyer Research Prize from the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation and holds an honorary doctorate from the University of Haute-Alsace. I first met Mark at the Norwegian Institute for Advanced Sciences, where he introduced me to a project called the Little Red Hen Lab. I learned about little red hens, but also got intrigued by the data he and his consortium had been collecting, and that has been growing ever since. Mark has been working hard on creating the resources for big data science for the study of multimodal communication, and I have benefited in my own research from this amazing resource. I now would like to hand over to Mark to present to you the latest news about what the little red hens have been up to.
Gracias por todo. Hola a todos. Gracias por la invitación. Hoy voy a dar una visión general de Red Hen Lab. Y si tiene alguna pregunta, por favor, interrúmpame inmediatamente. No hay aquí hoy un argumento secuencial y en este lugar podemos tener una conversación. Thank you very much for being patient with my Spanish. I was born in San Diego, where half of my friends are Mexican or Chicano, so I sometimes pretend that I can speak a little bit of Sonoran Spanish. As I said, I will give an overview today of Red Hen Lab. There are 1,000 times more things to say than I can say here. So I'm simply going to give you a topical introduction and ask you what you are interested in. I have 10,000 slides. Anything you want to talk about, we can talk about immediately. Okay, so please interrupt if you have questions. Now, you can also write to me afterward, of course. So I'm going to share a screen here. And the screen I'm going to share is Chrome. So there you are. This is markturner.org. All you have to remember from today is my name, Mark Turner. Not because I am vain, but because if you remember Mark Turner, then you can go to markturner.org and you will see how to get into Red Hen, how to write to us, how to write to me, how to see video presentations and articles and so on. You might also want to go to Red Hen Lab, but relax. All you have to do is go to markturner.org and click on the red hen, and it will take you to this page, which is an introduction to Red Hen. Let's do this, yeah. And Red Hen Lab will teach you all about, who we are and what we do, and all of our different enterprises. There are about 250 professors and professionals who are major red hens, that is, who have contributed and who run projects. We also have a learning environment. Many of the things I will talk about today are introduced. They're learning modules for you and your students. You can send them here. These are very elaborate. We have students put them together. And of course, you can get access to Red Hen. So if you go to you can, of course, all of you just write to me, but you can do this yourself. If you go to Red Hen Lab and type in access, it will take you to this page. Now, Red Hen Lab is an attempt to study multimodal communication. Our main mission is theory of multimodal communication. I'm mainly a linguist, right? But we also feel that our fields of linguistics and gesture research and so on could greatly benefit in our age from better tools, especially computational, statistical, and technical tools. So we do a lot of work to develop these tools, and I will show you some of the data and some of these tools. And we also want to bring in new people. So pedagogy is an important part of Red Hen. Those are our three main fields. So why do we do this, and what's it good for? Well, here I will switch to a PowerPoint, a slideshow, keynote, and that is right. It's coming up here somewhere. Be patient with me. Good. So if I now well, that's okay. Let's look at this. Okay, so do you see this PowerPoint or this slideshow? I bet you do. That's the sound check. Good. So remember markturner.org or Red Hen Lab. So the classic scene of human communication is multimodal. That is, human beings use not only text, that is, text is a very distant and rare sort of communication, but they use voice, prosody, suprasegmentals, emphasis, pauses, laughter. They use their body. The body is the basic platform for communication. They use material affordances. So I say, well, then we ran into the wall, and I'm just using this thing that's in my environment. They use everything they've got. And one of the things they use is each other. Most of linguistics has studied texts because texts are the data available, especially for historical times. It's often the case that speech did not survive. But this constraint is difficult for us, right? What we really want to study is human multimodal communication and how it all works together. And in our time, that includes human use of technology. So we are all communicating now by using various kinds of technology. Red Hen Lab wants to study all of this. We're also interested in other species. And in particular, if a human being is communicating with a border collie, that's interesting data for Red Hen. If a human being is communicating with a dog, we want to study that too. And I often give lectures on how impressive other species can be in communication, but they are nothing like human beings. Human beings are the weirdest thing in the universe. There is no robust animal model for studying human communication. We have to study actual human beings. And we all know that multimodality is the basic platform, that the classic scene of communication is multimodality. Here is a video of a baby, 1 year old, I think, tiene 13 meses, I think 13 months old, does not really have vocabulary, but is fully able to communicate. So the baby is trying to get the magazine to work like the iPad. Baby is poking it and trying to move the things because the baby grew up on the iPad, right? And is making noises and has the prosody right and is using an interrogative auditory sound, even though it doesn't have the words, right? I want that one over there, right? It is perfectly able to communicate and to engage and so on. So anyone who has ever seen a baby knows that this is what we need to study, right? Now, most of my life, I have not studied these things. Most of my life, I have, starting in the 60s and 70s, I have studied text, Greek text, Latin text, Spanish text, and mainly working on living human beings. So we put together the distributed Little Red Hen Lab. And I run this with Francis Steen at UCLA, but we have many, many, many projects at many, many universities. It's a club. It's a vast, global, international club which you can join. We get a lot of funding. We have been funded for 8 years by Google to run Google Summer of Code. And what do? And the answer is, well, we do whatever you want to do. We do whatever the researchers want to do. We don't have a staff. We don't have a service. We don't have a jefe. We are a loose organization of researchers who share their research. So we have many, many projects. Some that are completed, some that are in progress, some that are dreams. And they include things to help people wrangle data, to study natural language processing, to do machine learning, to study co-speech gesture, to study film. We make open data sets. We do automatic recognition of Aztec glyphs, and so on and so forth. So anything you'd like to ask about, just turn on your mic or put it in the chat, and Heriberto will see it, and we can talk about that. I don't have a particular line of things that I want to get through today. The important thing is to satisfy your curiosity. So one thing that occurred to us is that if you want to develop tools, you have to have a lot of data. In our age, we need a lot of data. And where do you get data? Well, we get it all over. Red Hen gets recordings and data from all kinds of things: radio, documentaries, laboratory experiments that we record, text, paintings, sculpture, all kinds of data across all kinds of modalities. But one way to get a lot of data really quickly is to record international TV network news. Now, it has some advantages. For one, it's broadcast free to the world. It often comes with closed captions. So we can get not only the video recording, we can take out, using a tool called CC Extractor, the closed captions, and then we can search that text. We can put the closed captions into time registration with the actual sound of the voice using a range of tools. One of them is called Gentle. And I'll be showing you some of this. Other examples or other advantages are it's broadcast all over the world, and United States law lets libraries and archives in the United States capture news from anywhere in the world and share it with researchers, even if it's owned by other people. It doesn't matter. Section 108 of the US Copyright Act. This is regarded as, important for information and important for democracy. We can't sell it. There's some limits, things like that. But we can use it for research. We can share it for research. This is part of the United States Constitution. And so we do. We record from all over. Now, we understand that this is not a substitute for face-to-face communication, but it's a lot of data. We also make recordings of face-to-face communication. And of course, a recording is not the same thing as actually having the experience either. One always has to be aware of the data. So we have, this is now out of date. We have something like 500,000 hours, 521,000 hours of recordings, 4.26 billion words and captions, 7.4 billion words of metadata. This is 150 terabytes of data. It's just vast. And we add to it about 150 hours every day, without any human work. This is just computational. It's just robots. They capture the signal, they process the signal, they tag the signal for grammar, they align the text with the moment of speech, and it goes into pipelines, right? So it doesn't matter. When I'm on vacation, this is all still running, right? And we do this now in about 28 languages, English in various spots in the United States and the UK. We do it in Spain, Germany, Russia, Brazil, China, Croatia. We do European Portuguese, and on and on and on and on. And we'd like to catch more. So here's an idea of what I'm actually talking about. All of this is immediately available in real time, right? So here are just a few clips.
There have been two
so that will be a question that's raised, but it's we really have to be careful because we may all be saying in a few minutes.
Foreign media, which provide alternative views on world news, views which often run in contrast to the coverage of events by the U.S. mainstream media.
We are in an information war, and we are losing that war. I'll be very blunt in my assessment. Al Jazeera is winning, The Chinese have opened up a global English language and multi-language television network. The Russians have opened up an English.
So what I'd like you to do is to imagine 500,000 hours of such recordings immediately available to you, not to watch, of course. Who can watch 500,000 hours of recordings? But to search, to select from, right? This is all available. And take, for instance, Hillary Clinton here. Look at her prosody, look at her gestures, right? And, you know, and we are losing that war, she says. The Russians, and she puts it at a distance from herself. The Russians have opened up an English language network. The Chinese have opened up an English language network. And then she says, we are cutting back. The BBC is cutting back. Okay, so gesture and face and body pose are the unmonitored channel, but they're crucial for communication. The sound of her voice. Now, also imagine we have not just news, we have all kinds of film, all kinds of radio, tapes made in the lab, and so on, right? So first thing, we want big data. Many times in my life, I have written articles on a linguistic construction where I heard somebody say something, and I thought it was interesting, and I tried to get some more examples, and I thought I figured out how it worked, and then I published what I thought was the analysis. And I would look around the world and see if there was any data that contradicted me, and I would invite everybody else to contradict me. And this is completely empirical, but the amount of data is often very small. Well, corpus linguistics came along and introduced us to big data, and it's just rolled from there. So now, if you have an idea about communication, it's pretty much going to be expected that you can test it against big data. You have a hypothesis, fine, let's see if it's true. Okay? So we can do this in any language.
Nos dejamos llevar por una persona que nos estaba insistiendo a pasar de aquel lado con la bandera de nosotros de Venezuela.
So that's from a couple days ago. Just, you know, I get it out and clip it in 2 seconds. It's all sitting there. It comes with closed captions and timestamps. So one can search the text, right? If you're looking for a particular kind of linguistic construction, one thing to do is search the text. We can do this in German.
Am Vorabend des Referendums ist Griechenland.
French.
Pour chaque musulman. 2000 personnes à Téhéran et 1
Croatian.
Nikoli 150, aktuálně.
Lots of Russian.
Концерт. Сложная и долгая эпопея с реставрацией.
And so on. Now, you've seen that you have the video, and we have some video search tools. I can talk about those. Of course, you can search the closed captions. For many of these, they're transcripts, and the transcripts don't have timestamps, but they're free. CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, other kinds of things. Many times there's a transcript. And we made a tool that will take the timestamps from the closed captions and put them on the transcripts in a good way. So all of these files are lined up by timestamps. We use Tesseract to find the on-screen text. So we're not talking about closed captions now, but if there's something that comes across the screen in a text box, we capture that. We know when it occurred on the screen. We do a lot of tagging in what's called a seg file. The basic files look something like this. So here's one for a CNN newsroom. Notice they all have the same file name, but a different extension. But they are essentially unified by the fact that they share the same timestamps. So if you want to know what's going on the screen at a particular time, it will put it together and you can recover that. In the background, it looks like this. This can be very frightening to people. But if you look here, what you see after the top block, which gives you information about the data, is the beginning timestamp and the ending timestamp. The third field is a primary tag. So CC1 means it's a closed caption. And then there's what it is. This is the basic structure of our flat files for metadata. As you see, just like this. Here is optical character recognition for the same file. So at those times, you would see that this is what is on the screen in the text box. You can go searching, of course, because we tag these things with usual natural language processing tools. Stanford Core NLP, the memory-based shallow parser. So you can go searching for grammar. If this looks like Martian to you, that's okay. We can actually show you how to search for grammar. And I'm only showing you stuff that's in the background. Might be a little intimidating if you're not familiar with this kind of metadata. Here's an example of a seg file. Notice that it tags for closed captions. It tags for grammar. By the way, all of this is automatic. No human being did any work here. Often when you look at one of these things, usually you're the first human being who has seen it. This is all automatic. We also tag for frames. Since you're linguists, many of you will know about conceptual frames. So we have a frame for a buy-sell agreement. If I say, I bought this car, and you say, well, what did you pay for it? I don't get to say, what do you mean pay for it? I did not pay anything. I didn't say that I paid anything, but I did. I said I bought it. And bought calls up the buy-sell agreement frame. It's a bundle of conceptual knowledge. So there's a slot in there for the price. Well, we can tag for frames. So as you see right here, this is, Charles Fillmore and FrameNet. So you get a closed caption, a player was injured during the game and also taken to the hospital, unrelated to the fight. And it says, hi, this calls up the injure frame. It calls up the duration frame. It calls up the fight frame. It calls up the hostile encounter frame. So you can search for these frames, not just for words. Search for frames, you can search for grammar. Of course, you can search for words. We have some command line search tools, but mostly what people use are other things like CQP Web. This is a search capacity based on the British National Corpus. So in English, we have these phrases that are not exactly like ablative absolutes, but they're close. We say, we'll do well absent a hurricane. So suppose you want to study that kind of construction. Well, you just go in and you type some little code and it calls up out of red hen all of these things that include absent and the grammar, right? So it's more than just absent, it's the right grammar. And if you click on one of them, then you see immediately the recording and you can watch it as many times as you want, right? You can download it. So this is a fairly rare construction, but you can get 150,000 hits immediately for an extremely rare construction, and you can watch it as much as you want. We also have the Edge search engine, where you can type things in and you start to see the text and you can play the hit. We have lots of search engines. We have many annotation pipelines, shot detections, topic detection, gesture detection. here's an example of a complicated gesture that was manually tagged. Watch, he's going to say, he's going to use for the whole thing and from start to finish. And then he's going to offer it to her and put his hand. So what he's doing here is giving gestures about timeline and completion, combined with gestures for discourse management, right?
To put the whole thing together from inception to completion.
So let's do that again.
To put the whole thing together from inception to completion.
Right? Now, immensely complicated, but here you can stop it and you can do manually tag it. You can manually tag it, right? These, by contrast, are the results of machine learning. Say, go through and pick out things that have to do with the timeline from the beginning to the end. So no human being did this. The computer found this.
Put it into stopping things the next time. If this
right, stopping things the next time. So suppose you're interested in timeline gestures, as Cristobal Pagan Canova says. Now, it's very important to be able to get the multimodality. I point out to you that sometimes the voice pattern is part of the construction. So in English, I can say there are days and then there are days. That's contrastive and it has then in it. Or I can say there are days and days and days, right? That's the accretive. But in Spanish, as you know, I can say ideas, ideas, and that's accretive. But if I say ideas, ideas, that's contrastive. And it's not lexically, it's the same. But you have to be able to hear the voice to know which construction this is, multimodality. Now, suppose you want to study something like, what can you do with all this? Well, suppose you want to study a construction like what's called the comparative correlative. Thomas Hoffmann wants to study this. He's there in Bavaria at Eichstätt. The X or the wire is something like the bigger the better, right? Or the closer this front gets, the stronger the cool, moist onshore wind. Now, Thomas Hoffmann thinks that there are intonation contours that go with this construction and maybe gestures, right? So you can search. He's got a paper on this. So you can search using CQP Web and you immediately get a zillion hits finding the comparative correlative. And there it is. And if I were to click one of these right now, we would immediately in real time call up that clip out of Red Hen. In other words, it goes right in to 527,000 hours of recording and pulls out just the clip for this. It's amazing. And that clip, so what can you use it for? Well, you can do, I write articles on various kinds of constructions, and I use Red Hen to get the data, test the data, and so on. So one time, not long ago, I asked a linguist what he was working on. And he said, well, you notice how you say, I know the fastest, I know the two fastest swimmers, or I know the fastest two swimmers. But you never say, I know the fastest one runner. That doesn't sound like English. That's not grammatical. You don't say, I know the fastest one runner, he said, but you say, I know the fastest two runners. Why? And I said, okay, let's test it. We just pulled up the laptop and we went looking for the fastest runner, and we, of course, found it. And then we looked for the superlative runner, so you get the oldest. And then we looked for superlative, any kind of noun. You get 170,000 hits in 39 seconds. They look like this: the best training, the highest risk. Now I want either the most or the superlative form of the adjective followed by a noun, 219,000 hits, the most common side, the most challenging appointment. You can make it more complicated. And finally, you get to, let's look for the superlative one noun, right? Do we find anything like this? Well, we find a lot. We find thousands of hits, and some of them are not the kinds that this linguist was talking about. But right here, you get Congresswoman, what is the most important one issue? The most important thing. Or, but take a look at the worst return on gold in the worst 1 year. Okay, so if you have an idea about what people will say, and you have a hypothesis, one thing you can do now, instead of, I don't know, looking at the newspaper or listening to people in the cafe, is you can actually check it against 8 billion words in 28 languages. We tag for all kinds of things. So if you want to know about, I want examples where a weather event might be likely for a political locale, then because political locales are tagged and frames for likelihood are tagged and frames for weather event are tagged, you find it. Even though you might not know that a marine layer is a weather event, and you might not have been thinking that may has to do with likelihood, right? So again, what do you do with all this when you get it? Well, of course, you throw it into R because you can export it into comma-separated value files. I recommend greatly this book by a guy named Harold Bayan on analyzing linguistic data. It has guided us very strongly, and you can do linear regressions, logistical, treating forest, various kinds of things. So often when we study something, we go looking for something, we get all the hits, we throw it into R, we clean up the data a little, throw it into R. It's often that we see results without ever having looked at the data, right? So it's not as if you have to sit forever and study one expression and then another expression and another expression. No, you can use these big tools to get some rough idea of what's going on. So I have been working forever in a construction called the XYZ, or at least that's what I call it. X is the Y of Z. Death is the mother of beauty. Salonika is the Chicago of Greece, right? These flame retardants are the asbestos of our time. Bakersfield is the Alaska of California. Now, I studied this when I was in graduate school just by writing them down and looking in concordances. I wrote paper after paper on them. Now, of course, what I could do starting in 2012 is just ask Red Hen to find them, and can find, 100,000 hits in 15 seconds, right? This group is the dawn of Libya. At Hillshire Farm, spice is the spice of life, right? I'm also very interested in errors. People make mistakes, but they don't make mistakes randomly. So you notice something like somebody says, this is my future husband-to-be. So your future husband and your husband-to-be mean the same thing. So it's very common that when there are two targets, people will combine them. This is my future husband-to-be, right? Or most cars under $200 or less. People don't notice this, but it happens all the time. So here are some XYZs, some various forms of XYZ, different grammatical patterns of XYZ. And I thought that a certain kind of mistake should arise because if we get something like that car is the equivalent of the Mona Lisa, and that car is the automotive Mona Lisa. Notice that the second one is a noun phrase that might drop into the noun phrase spot from the seventh one. So do you get mistakes like that car is the equivalent of the automotive Mona Lisa? And of course, I didn't go looking for Mona Lisa or cars. I went looking for the grammar. And the answer is yes. Just listen.
elevated this. It set a record, and it elevated this industry to investor class. I mean, why go to gold when you can go to cars?
That's right. You know, that car is the equivalent of the automotive Mona Lisa. It's one of the finest cars in the world, and a lot of...
So you can make a hypothesis about things that should happen and why they should happen. And then you can search and see whether they happen, right? So this is just standard science. You have an idea, you have a hypothesis, you have an analysis, you think that this is how it works. And now you can go testing it against massive data that was not part of your in-sample data. So I look at all kinds of things like the use of here and now.
Joining me now, Scott Rasmussen, president of RasmussenReports.com and author of The People's Money. Also, Chris Stirewalt, our Fox News digital politics editor and host of Power Play on FoxNews.com. All right, guys, thank you both so much for being here.
Amazing constructions. Joining me now, where are they, right? What's this now? Is it when we're hearing it? Is it? It turns out that despite the view of linguists that here and now are fairly simple, now always means the moment of utterance you will hear. That turns out to be very false. So we looked at Red Hen and we compared the use of here and now in English to the use of 5 words in Russian. So even though I only know 5 words of Russian, I have an article in Russian linguistics on these kinds of deictics and how complicated they are. And the reason for that is because of Red Hen. And so I'm going to skip over all these other kinds of things just to give you an idea of, these are all just cases where we've wanted to work on a particular kind of construction. And the reason we were able to do it is because of Red Hen. And there's lots of stuff. So for instance, one of the things I'm working on
is going to be somewhere close to South Florida by the end of this week, perhaps Thursday or Friday.
One of the things I'm working on is people's conceptions of the future involving uncertainty, multimodal constructions about uncertainty. And this hurricane cone gets bigger. That's not because the hurricane is going to get bigger. It gets bigger because your uncertainty is greater. So now I can study multimodal communication about uncertainty in the future. Just an example, I'm going to end with 2 articles that have just been published, and then we'll just take questions, right? I'm going to stop sharing the screen to give you an idea of the kinds of things you can do here. One of the problems we had, and there are just many, so many of these things. If you have questions, just ask. One of the things that so I'm going to share this screen right here so that you can see this article. Yeah, right there being, I don't need to share sound because these are, yes, I do need to share sound. Okay, there we are. You're seeing the Red Hen anonymizer and the Red Hen protocol for de-identifying audiovisual recordings. And this has been accepted. It's being copy edited in Linguistics Vanguard. And the problem is that sharing data is crucial. But for a lot of experiments that we do in the lab, we can't share the data because of privacy concerns. So we put together a team and we made the Red Hen anonymizer. And what the Red Hen anonymizer will let you do is change the voice using SOX and vocoder. You can change it in many different ways so that the voice does not indicate personal identity. And 3 different ways that you can anonymize the appearance, right? One way is to use open pose. So I'll give you an example of what this tool does. Let's see if this works. Yeah. Stay with me. So we're getting a little bit of lag, but I will fix that. The point is,
he has in the channel.
Here we go.
And his remote balance is my balance. So in every payment channel, there's two balances. Think of it as a pile of money sitting on one side.
Right. So you see what happens here is you can take a video and change the voice, and you can also use open pose to
channel and a pile of money sitting on the other side of the channel. When we opened this channel between us, because I funded it into the multi-signature address with a transaction, the money's all sitting on.
There's lag here, but this looks very fluid when you study it. And you can also just drop out the video. So the result then is that you can see someone talking and moving their mouth and everything. And you can study it, but you can't tell who the person is. This means you can now share the data. And we have worked this through our institutional review board. There are other things that you can do. That is, you can cover up the face. I'll show you this really quickly. Yeah, right here. Yeah, so you can just show skeletons. You can cover up the face, and this is dynamic. It means that when you are watching the video, the face is blocked out. And another thing we can do, and this is very important, is you can take any computer-generated face and you can paste it on any video. And the result is you have a video that looks like this, but then it looks like this. Or you can make any other face. I could put my face on this person. I could put Einstein's face on this person. You can just change the faces. This uses FSGAN. And so this article allows people now to de-identify data so they can share it, so we can make open data sets. And we have a number of open data sets like this on our website. And here's another one, just last example, then we'll take this one's under review. So you know there's a lot that goes on in audio aside from speech, but one thing you'd like to know just is there speech. So we wrote the Red Hen Audio Tagger, one of our many tools that will take any video, home videos, ancient videos, films, anything, and will pre-process it and then run it through an audio tagger that picks out 521 different kinds of sounds and gives confidence ratings for them. This is all automatic. You just feed it in, out it comes in a CSV file or an SFX file. We use Yamnet. And the result of this is that you then get a CSV file that you can import into Elan. So if you want to do more manual tagging, you just import it into Elan because we built it so you can. And then what you get in your Elan annotator is, of course, tiers. See where it says audio tags. All of these are provided by the annotator, the Red Hen Audio Tagger. And it tells you what kind of sound is it? Is it speech? Is it a turkey gobbling? Is it whale noise? Is it music? Is it helicopter blades whirring? Is it laughter? Is it? And it tells you when it starts and when it ends, and it gives you a confidence score for that detection. And of course, you don't have to sit and look at 521 tiers of audio tagging. You can in Elan, and you can add other kinds of things. But this is something that is in a CSV file. So you can pipe it straight into R, and you can run statistical analysis. Now, I'm going to stop here with the examples and just say that we're dedicated to studying multimodal communication. What we really care about is theory. I've talked about very little theory today, or very few of my research hypotheses. I do that all the time, but that's not what I'm doing today. This is about how linguistics and the study of multimodal communication can try to be in the same kind of situation that you find in other sciences. Astrophysicists share data all the time. They get big data and they share data all the time. Right now, the James Webb Space Telescope is up there getting a ton of data about stars that we've never had before and making it available to the whole world. Back when they did the human genome, all over the world, people worked getting data and putting it together and working online together. They shared their data, they shared their tools, they shared their analyses. In neuroscience, there are now similar kinds of big data projects. And in our age, big data science, I teach in the data science faculty here at Case, along with the cognitive science. In our age, big data science and computational and statistical and technical tools are now available. So how about linguistics and the study of multimodal communication? Well, as I say, there have been traditions of concordances and corpus linguistics, and this is all just an attempt to take the work of hundreds of people worldwide and move the study of multimodal communication into the big data age. As I said at the beginning, if you want to get involved in Red Hen, we can share these things with researchers. You go to redhenlab.org and look up access and read the page and send a little request, and it goes through the access panel, and we'd love to hear you. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. No te he oído, Heriberto. Questions, preguntas. Hay preguntas, mis amigos.
A ver, Heriberto, creo que ya estamos.
Hola, hola. ¿Sí? ¿Estoy?
Sí,
No.
Heriberto, te comento
Hola,
brevemente.
Hola, hola.
¿Me
Sí.
escuchas?
Sí.
No está saliendo la traducción simultánea por YouTube, solamente nos está funcionando en sala. Entonces,
ok.
creo que ahora para las participaciones nos vamos a tener que ir por el método antiguo.
Sí,
De que
sí.
Mark vaya hablando y tú lo vayas traduciendo aquí, te dé un momentito para traducir.
Ok.
Para que no se pierda su participación y las respuestas que pueda haber.
Great.
Sí,
Okay,
espero
so
pacientemente.
yeah. Thank you very much, Mark. This is amazing. It's a fantastic project, and it's so thrilling to see big data coming to linguistics in our times. I mean, we can see, as you well said, so astrophysicists are sharing data since 10 years ago, 12 years ago or so. And I remember it was like 4 teras a day that the web was downloading. So it's so much data that a single person can process or get hold of this. So this should be really an international community effort to analyze all this. So we have this opportunity. Anyhow,
Yes, we have you have infinite data. I mean, as far as we know, all human beings have been communicating very robustly for at least 50,000 years. And almost any human scene is a scene of human communication. So if you just think of the amount of communication that is happening every day, it's absolutely vast. The question is, how can, and you would drown in it. A human being only has so much brain, only so much attention, and must sleep sometime. And it's true of astrophysicists too. So the question is, how can we use robots and computers and machine learning and computers never sleep. They work all the time. They're very fast. They're not human beings, but they can do some things pretty well. How do we use all of that so that we can make our science go faster? The mathematician Lagrange said that Napier, an astronomer and mathematician, had doubled the life of the astronomer by inventing logarithms. Because with logarithms, you add exponents instead of multiplying numbers. It's a lot faster and it's a lot less prone to errors. Well, Red Hen, the question is, where are the logarithms for people who work on communication? Where are the technical tools that can make us able to work 100 times faster? That's part of Red Hen's mission.
Yes. Well, let me just start with the.
Harold also has a question.
Oh yes,
go ahead.
Just a really basic question. So, I'm a linguist. I'm a field worker, and it's amazing to see all this data coming from English, Russian, Chinese. But how you and the Red Hen Lab project handles the other 6,000 languages of the world?
Yeah. That's an excellent question, and it's an important one for our time. You know, the National Science Foundation in the United States has an entire sector for the study of endangered languages. Jim Macaulay, scores of years ago, wrote that languages are disappearing very fast, and we're losing all that data. You know, how do we get it? Okay, well, by the way, we don't have anybody capturing Mexican TV. We have a capture station that captures the Mexican that you can get in Southern California, right? Because it comes over the border, we just capture it. If anybody in Mexico wants to put up capture, we will show you how to do it. It's very cheap. It's very easy, very sophisticated. And it's not just TV. We can capture radio. We can capture. Just write to us. We'll tell you how to do it, right?
May I just add to this?
Yeah.
And then you continue. Sorry for interrupting, but let me rephrase Heriberto's question a little bit differently. Namely, that if we now do field work, we go and collect new data, something that Heriberto and I have been talking about of doing, and we know that this whole Red Hen pipeline exists. What do you advise us to do? How to do this? How to set up stuff so that if we go to Pama languages in Mexico, we can slot that into your engine? That is what I am very curious about.
Okay, I'll tell this is a great question, but it'll take about 120 seconds to answer. So for starters, there are lots of languages that are in remote places, but are still broadcast. So there's radio all over the world, and in fact, there's TV all over the world. So what we do there is you can send a little capture station or build one. It costs a couple $100. And it captures it and it records it to a hard disk, 8 terabyte hard disk. You can get a ton of data. Now, there's no internet connectivity, but so what? We mail you a new hard disk and you mail us the old one once a year. And then we just take it off the hard disk and then we have it. So we can capture things on remote islands. What you just need is somebody there who wants to do it and who understands something about the language. Next, of course, if you take a recording device into the wild, into the field, and you turn on the tape recorder or use your iPhone or whatever, or you record things, great. You just tell us you'd like to put this into Red Hen. And there are 2 ways to do it. One is you put it on your server and we just link to it. When I say things are in Red Hen, it is true that there are complete connections at UCLA and Case Western Reserve University in the libraries, or technically in the libraries, because the law lets us do that, right? But we can also just link to another server. In the background, nobody even knows where it is. You just link, you put it on a server you've got, we link to it. Another thing we can do is actually move it or copy it. This is all just completely trivial. We've been doing this kind of thing for 60 years. Just talk to us about what you've got, what you're capturing, how to put it in. Now, you might think that there's a problem with intellectual property, but there's not, because we don't share this with the public. We share it only with researchers under Section 108 of the US Copyright Act. And we can share it with them, and they can do their research, and then the results they get or the tools they build, those can be shared freely. Those are called derived products. So we can even put, the Disney cartoons inside Red Hen, as long as the only people we allow to see them are people like me who purchased a copy and put it in Red Hen, and now I can look at it, or my students can look at it. We can't share it, right? So actually getting things into Red Hen has a much simpler solution than you might think. All you need is some kind of recording device. The recording device can be text, and you take a scan of it. It can be a painting, and you take a picture of it. It can be a video, so there's a cultural ritual, and you record it. It can be a tape recording. It can be a radio broadcast. It can be a TV broadcast, whatever. It's getting the data that's hard. Actually sticking it in Red Hen is not so hard. And that's the point. Once you've done all this work to get this data, well, what are you going to do? Just sit around and watch 1,000 hours of recordings? No. If it's tape recording, audio recording, we can do speech to text. We can do alignment. Then you can search the text. Then you can put it in R, right? So you come up with the project. We could start just, for instance, with putting some Mexican broadcasts in. You come up with the project, write to me, and we will talk to you about how to get it into Red Hen. It's simpler than you think. Yeah, Damien, you might want to unmute yourself, yeah.
Yes, that would help. Thanks so much, Mark. I'm astonished by the scale of the project. It's really amazing seeing this. And also, I have to say that many of us paralinguists have been pushing for the need of larger data, but it seems that, as non-members of the brotherhood of linguists, then there's a bit of like, well, you don't know about the intimate understanding of linguistic data that comes with being a proper linguist, and I'm quote unquote.
Yeah, if I could pause just there for a second and say, I have 100 slides on paralinguistics. It's things about size, or inhale, the way they do in Denmark. And in Denmark, they move their hand like that, right? Tapping on the desk, making noises. This is all, you saw that baby. That baby did not have words yet, but had fabulous paralinguistics and prosody and so on. So yes, what Red Hen wants to open up the concept of what counts as communicative data. And so paralinguistics is fully part of the club. No longer regarded as secondary linguists.
It's marginal.
Please go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah. No, thanks for that. So I see there is some obvious excitement about the Red Hen and as a repository and as a source of information for different projects. And I wonder whether it will be okay to ask you a couple of questions about some of the more. So I see that, correct me if I'm wrong, from a point of view of someone who has access to interesting data, multimodal data that could be shared, the first thing I could think that they could benefit from will be visibility. The moment you share the resource with Hen Lab, then there's all these other researchers that have access, know that this exists, there's some normalization, I expect, etc. Now, this takes me to two questions. First is, how does it work with, say, credit and authorship and stuff like that? If you get access to a repository and you use a specific corpus of someone, is there any agreement in relation to whether you should cite the resource itself as standalone, whether the person should be invited or something like that? Because that's, as you know, this is how it works with many people, in particular those who work with small data sets and non-canonical languages? And second question, and you might be able to answer those in tandem, is there any IRB-ish procedure when it comes to sharing data, let's say, or like, someone reaches out to you, they say, I have this data I could share, but then there's some aspects of the content of the data that might be in conflict. So how does it work from that point of view? Thank you.
Excellent. So Red Hen Lab is a club. It's a huge club. It's a global club, but it's still a club. And we rely an awful lot on trust. Remember, this is not anonymous. If you're using somebody's work, they will know, we will know. You have to say what you're going to do. Somebody's watching. The club is highly social. We have Zooms, and we've been doing this since 1999, long before anybody else knew how to do video conferencing. The main achievement of Red Hen Lab is actually sociological. We specialize in putting together teams of people who otherwise would not talk to each other or would not know how to talk to each other. We put them together, we all have some coffee, and we talk about how to do it. And these meetings can go on for a couple of hours while we figure out how to do the research and how to write the paper, right? So there are some kinds of things that we do not share with the public. We share with researchers who are willing to contribute a little something to Red Hen. It always has to be that you get a lot more out of Red Hen than you put in, because you get the community and the network, and you get all the work all those people have done, all of it, and you just contribute your thing, right? So we don't share with the public, we share with researchers, and we know what they're doing. Certain kinds of things can just be immediately shared. Anything that was broadcast publicly can be shared. Now, we do say you can't sell it. You can't go into competition with whoever provided it, and so on. But things like the television broadcasts I showed you of the news, there's no impediment at all about sharing that with researchers. And we don't have to give any credit. They were publicly broadcast. The Section 108 of the US Copyright Act covers that completely. And that is true not just for what you think of as hard news, but also soft news. News in American law is pretty much any time people are talking publicly about current events. So on late night talk shows, or on things like The View, or with Oprah Winfrey, or there's a Spanish TV show called El Hormiguero, I think it is, The Anthill, goes on for 2 hours at a time, right? We record that, right? Fine, that's news. You might not have thought of that as news, but it's news. When the late night talk show stand-up comic is making fun of the president of the United States or the president of Brazil, that's news. So all that stuff can be in Red Hen and can be shared. Now the question is intellectual property. And there we do have to be a little bit careful. If you have the right to see that intellectual property because your library has a copy of it, fine, no problem. Now you can't publish it and make money. So there are two questions. This is a big issue of law, but we have a big legal team. One is, what can you look at to do research? And the answer is you can look at a ton of things to do research. That's not a problem, because the Library of Congress says everybody who does anything has to give the Library of Congress a copy that can be loaned for research. And then you get your article, or you get your analysis, or you get your R package, or whatever it is, and that's a derived product, and you can share that. Now the next question is, and it's a separate question, can you show the data? And this differs in different nations. In the United States, it's covered by fair use. But our legal team counsels us on fair use, and they're very aggressive. They think people are not using things as widely as they could for presentations and for teaching. And I'm ready to talk to you about that, okay? And on it goes, on it goes, it goes. Now, about IRB. Suppose you record something and there are privacy problems. Yes, then you have to go through the IRB, but the Red Hen Anonymizer comes with, if you click on the link, 10 pages from the Case Western Reserve University IRB on how to de-identify data. See, we all know how to de-identify text. If you've got an Excel spreadsheet or something, you delete the names, you delete the email addresses, you delete all the questions in the post-experiment questionnaire that would be identifying. We all know how to do that, and we stick the data in Dataverse or at Harvard or something like that. But how do you do this for audiovisual recordings? Well, we've got 10 pages on that. Write to me, I'll send you the link, and it will be in the article. And what we say to everybody, I mean, it took my IRB 13 months to do this. And the only reason they did it is because they're my IRB, so they didn't have any choice. And they're the first one. And what we say is, if anybody else goes to your IRB, or I'm very much aware that in Latin America, South America, Europe, and so on, it's not an IRB, it's something else. You go to your people and see what they say. You can show them what the case IRB says and see what they say, and then we will, and write to us, we will post it on that website. So now what we're going to have is a global portal of all the authorities saying what you can do and what you can share, because this conversation has never been had. And it has to be had, and it has to happen globally. And most of these governing agencies won't want to touch it because they don't know what to do. But there already is one, the Case Western Reserve University Institutional Review Board, and Case is all about research. It gets the 20, it's a small university relative to things like USC or Harvard or Stanford, MIT, but it gets the 27th most funding for research. That's not per capita, that's just absolute. This place pulls in an astonishing amount of research money. So our IRB board is really equipped, medical, all kinds of things, right? So you've got a 10-page document keyed to the Red Hen Anonymizer and the Red Hen protocol. So your question has been anticipated. We know this is a big deal. We've already got the thing that starts. You can go to your IRB or the equivalent and say, hi, you have to look at this and tell us what we can do. And they say, no, we don't. And you say, yes, you do. The Case Western Reserve, the Red Hen protocol says this. This is official at this university. What's your response, right? This will take struggle, but it's a struggle we have to have, right? So all of your questions are entirely appropriate. Now about credit. Well, there we just inherit all of the normal cultural expectations of research. We have an open data set put together by Yao Tong and Peter Uhrig, who was just in here, that has manual tagging a gesture for 10 hours of the Ellen DeGeneres show, but also open pose tagging and some other automatic kinds of tagging. And there it is. It's an open data set. This is also cited in the article. Well, we don't say to people, if you use this open data set by Tong and Uhrig, which we're citing, you should cite it too. But, you know, everybody knows that, right? And so we're, in some sense, we're just inheriting, these things are published and you cite what you use, right? We don't police anything really. We like it when people use Red Hen data for them to say, blah, 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 Red Hen. But the reason we do that is because we get a lot of benefit from the Case Western Reserve University high performance computing service. It's free, they love us, and we like to cite them just so they're arranged. By the way, you will find, this is the Cracker Barrel session, you will find that people with resources for studying big data will really love you. And the reason for it is they get their money from governments or foundations or universities. And the way they get that money is they say, we serve everyone. Big data is everywhere, so you have to make this available. But in fact, most of the people who use it are doing epidemiology or material science or astrophysics or something like that. So it doesn't look like they serve everyone. Red Hen Lab is the one in the social sciences and the humanities. I mean, we do things with Christian art and iconography and picking out that this is John the Baptist, this is Mother Mary, this is Mother Mary from a biblical scene, this is Mother Mary as an apparition at a certain place, you know, and the machine learning on recognizing Christian iconography, okay? So everybody always says, Mark, can you or somebody else come and talk about Red Hen Lab to the trustees, to the people who are giving money, to the donors, to the government. So I go to the national, and the reason they want that is so that they can say, we serve everybody, including the people in the humanities and the social sciences. So after the epidemiologist and the materials scientist and the genome expert and the neuroscientist and the astrophysicist talk, then I get up and I show them all this nifty stuff about communication and babies and Christian iconography, and they love it so much that they'll do anything. They'll just do anything. Exceed, which is the supercomputer branch of the National Science Foundation, has been encouraging us for years. Please submit a project to Exceed. They will provide the staff. They will this. You will find that you tell them you want to study paralinguistics. You show a couple of 12-year-olds talking with paralinguistics. They will just love you. They want linguists inside big data more than you can imagine. And all of these questions about citation, credit, credentials, they just go through the normal paths. You can get really famous by making an open data set, but then of course you put your name on it, you announce it somewhere, and part of it is you say, you know, please cite this. And that just all gets worked out culturally. And these patterns are pretty well established. There might be some new culture to develop since it's now going global. That's it. Anything else, guys?
Well, I have one follow-up question.
Yeah.
And that, so what are your connections with the child language acquisition community? Because of course, people like McWhinney with the child database try to do something like, that was a very tough data acquisition, but it seems to me that somehow we would all benefit if these different streams of information would merge. So
yes,
I don't know.
Yes. So in fact, I've talked to Brian. I've joined his team. I have an account on his data site and so on. I look at, and you're quite right. It's extremely difficult data acquisition. IRB questions come right in because this is a protected category of children and so on. In my Department of Cognitive Science here, there's a colleague, Yash Rai, who works focally in second language acquisition, in particular child second language acquisition. And I also work with the people at the Ohio State University and in China on child language acquisition. So the first thing is how to get data. That's hard. Red Hen has no magic way to do that. I mean, there's nothing like international TV news that you can just, it's always easier to find data instead of make data, right? So there's nothing we can just automatically capture. But if there is, let us know and tell us you'd like to set up a capture station. If there are data, Red Hen is ready to connect them. And I've said this to Brian, but there are problems. That data is protected. There are legal constraints. So if we took second language acquisition instead of child language acquisition, like second language acquisition of English in China, I work with people in Hunan and other places on that. That's pretty easy in the sense that there are a lot of people doing it. You just need somebody to record it. And then we can put it in Red Hen. We have automatic speech recognition for Chinese. It could be better, but it gets better every 6 months. There are off-the-shelf kinds of things that do this. We Whisper AI works. Baidu has Paddle. We just run a lot of things on this, and what's needed is just somebody who wants to do it, somebody who's willing to sit on top of it and make it happen. But Red Hen is open. One of the problems that we have is always there needs to be a local person. So I don't know how to get the Brian McWhinney database connected to Red Hen because there's not a staff. I mean, an awful lot of these things. Well, one thing that happens to us pretty often is somebody says, oh, 25 years ago, I captured a year of this kind of stuff. And we say, well, great, put it on a server and we'll pull it. I have a 440 terabyte server, data server, file server, as you know, Harold, just sitting inside the Case Western Reserve University High Performance Center. This is a level of service that's just makes you drunk with a sense of power. If anybody's got something, we know how to transfer it in there, right? But there has to be, so people often ask me, well, why isn't Red Hen doing this? Why isn't Red Hen doing this? This is more important than this. A is more important than B. Why are you doing B? And the answer is, we don't have a hierarchical organization. What we have is a club. If something's happening in Red Hen, it's because there's some Red Hen, somebody like Damien, Harold, or Heriberto that wants to do it. And they organize their students and they organize their team and then they do it. So for all these things, our ears are open. That's why Red Hen exists. Spread the word. So thank you all for your attention.
Let's see.
And remember, markturner.org. From there, you can get to Red Hen. You can get to the TechNate public site. You can find everything. You can find out about access. Let us know. And let us know what you'd like to do, because what Red Hen does is because somebody wants to do it.
That's great. Thank you very much, Mark. This is really amazing, fantastic. It's impressive all together. So, well, so is there anything? So we have different channels. Let me see. We have YouTube and we have Facebook. And I don't know what questions there because I don't have access to those. Sergio.
One thing you can do is send me the link to any of these recordings. Hen Lab runs a YouTube channel.
Yes.
And if you go to markturner.org, you'll see that you can go to the YouTube channel and you can see lots of presentations about this kind of stuff. We're big users of social media recordings of presentations.
Great, excellent. So, well, we have greetings and accolades and
yes, everybody's saying hi and thanks. Yeah, just write to markturner.org. Go there. My email address is there.
Sure.
It's also Hen Lab and so on and so forth.
Great. Well, thank you very much,
Thank you very
Mark.
much.
And
thanks, Mark.
I'm really glad that you opened this this area to the Spanish-speaking world. I mean, it's quite a lot of speakers that may be interested and linguists. So that's fantastic.
Spanish is the second is the second or third most spoken language in the world, and it's all over the world.
Yes,
it's all over the world. So, and we capture in Spain all the time. But just think about, what kind of data from Mexico would you like to capture? And
oh yes.
And what would you like to do with it? Yeah. Okay.
Excellent. Well,
the future is bright without limit. Good luck.
Absolutely.
Buena suerte. Adios.
Okay. Bye, Mark.
As people say, life is short but wide.
Yeah.
So for the rest of the people here, so let me announce in advance that we have for the December session already confirmed Vito Pirelli from the Institute for Computational Linguistics in Italy. So keep tuned and we will share details of this presentation, this session in December coming up. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the team of the Coordinación Nacional de Antropología in Mexico. Thank you, Juan Carlos and the team, and all these people who made this possible, Frida, Harald, and Rosalia, and Damian. Thank you, Sergio. Thank you, everyone. Good to see you. And
and thank you, Heriberto.
Well, bye, everyone.
Bye.
Instituto Nacional de Antropología e Historia.
Secretaría de Cultura.
Gobierno de México.